Thank you for the opportunity to be able to address you and to share really what is the topic of what I'm going to share is how being green is a Jewish value. Thanks to the American Jewish community for putting this together, and thanks to all of you for taking time from your busy schedules to sharing a little study, if you will, with me. 2 times during the year, my grandfather would take me outside and point up at the moon. And each of those times, the moon was in full glow, a full moon looming just over the horizon. And those 2 times were during the holiday of Sukkot, the harvest festival, and then again in Passover, Pesach, during the spring and the first full moon of spring. Those are 2 of the 3 Jewish, what are called pilgrimage festivals, when the ancients, back in biblical days, would go up to Jerusalem and make their special sacrifices when that was the way the religion was experienced through temple sacrifices. And those holidays have come down through and become holidays that are now celebrated in the synagogue. Those are 2 of the 3 pilgrimage festivals. From the second day of Passover in the spring, we count off 7 weeks, 49 days, to the end of the harvest, the beginning of summer, and the holiday of Shavuot. So each of those 3 pilgrimage festivals are linked to the harvests and the location of the sun and the cycles of the seasons, and Judaism then took that known cycle and put those holidays, the Jewish holidays, on top of them. I'm not even giving you the historical overlay that Judaism adds, I'm just giving you the agricultural significance of the holidays. If you want, that's the next class when I come back. So Sukkot then becomes the most important holiday in the Jewish cycle. Now, most people think, oh, it's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Jewish New Year. Well, actually, even though that's when we see most of our Jews in synagogue, the truth is that Sukkot is called Hechag, the holiday in the Jewish calendar, because it's the end of the summer harvest, and it's the holiday that marks the beginning of the winter rains and the hope that there'll be an opportunity to plant the winter produce, which in Israel is the rainy season, and that's when the produce will be planted to grow. So it shows you then how the Jewish calendar itself, even as we observe it in modern times, is closely linked to the agricultural cycle in Israel. Now let's go to the Bible, at least early in the Bible, the book of Genesis. The biblical myth of creation comes out of that consciousness of the seasonal cycle and its connection to the natural world. The creation story, as the Jews spin it, is God's ultimate act of grace on behalf of all humanity, fashioning a world that provides for us, that sustains us, and that has this beautiful nature of cycles that we can all rely upon to be sustained, to live. What the creation story in Genesis does is to place humanity at the top. We're all familiar with that, but what does it mean? Well, humanity is told that we are tenders and tillers of the world. And it places then in our hands a tremendous responsibility to take care of that world and of that earth. Moving farther along in the Bible come the Jewish practices of kashrut, or the kosher laws. Now, we think about kosher laws as perhaps being those that set Jews apart in terms of where they dine and how they dine in the restaurants. But actually, if we look a little deeper into the laws, originally their intent was to organize and classify the natural world. Because certain foods are edible. What makes them edible? Well, they have to be animals that are beasts of the field. They have to be animals that aren't secondary consumers, in other words, that don't eat flesh. Then by eating them, we would be eating flesh. They have to be animals that fit into the ancient classification system. A kosher beast that can be eaten has split hooves and chews its cud. Any animal outside of that classification doesn't fit the beast of the field category, therefore is outside of what can be eaten according to kosher laws. There's, in the kosher laws, biblically, a profound respect for what was seen as the life force of the living animal. Now, we, in a modern world, kind of lose touch with that consciousness because we see blood differently. But in biblical days, blood was seen as God's force in the animal, the life force. And so Jews were prohibited from eating blood because it was seen as so sacred, so powerful, that it was off their diet, it couldn't be eaten. And the greatest way of showing respect to the animal when the animal was killed was to put that blood back on the earth, where the life force could be united with the sustaining substance. There is an element of compassion for the order of creation also in biblical laws. We're told that we can't mix an animal in its mother's milk. Now think about that, the brilliance behind that for a minute. What that basically says is there's something wrong. We disturb the natural order. We are on top of the pyramid, if you will, and have the capacity to do anything we want. Can't disturb the natural order by taking the life-giving substance that the mother gives to the offspring and using that to cook the offspring. That's an affront to God and to the natural order. So that's where the Jewish prohibition against mixing milk and meat comes from. There's clearly a profound consciousness of the order of the world and the nature of the human relationship to that order. It's said by many that the ultimate goal of kosher laws is vegetarianism. It's tough to keep kosher. It's tough to slaughter an animal kosherly. It's tough to economically actually do that slaughter for all kinds of reasons. Ultimately, what the Bible would like us to do, what Jewish tradition would like us to be at, is a place of vegetarianism. So we've done the Bible, we've done some Jewish observances. Last, I want to talk about worship. Even the Jewish worship service links the worshiper to nature. The first time during the day that prayers can be said is when the sun is high enough in the sky and the light is streaming through the window bright enough so that one can distinguish between the black and white stripes of the prayer shawl. So the sun then has to be visible. Nature has to cooperate, if you will, in order for a Jew to say the first prayers. That prayer is called shachri. It comes from the Hebrew word for dawn. Afternoon prayers happen when the sun is at its height, and evening prayers, called ma'ariv, happen when the sun is dropping. And in fact, we had a beautiful experience last week with Shavuot. We walked up on the top of Mulholland. If you haven't had a chance to do that, it's a great thing to do if you're from out of the country. It's certainly a great way to experience LA. You walk along what's called Dirt Mulholland, and as we were walking, it was about 8 o'clock, and we stood there on the mountaintop and watched the sun disappear behind the mountains over Ventura County. And as we watched the sun disappear, we said the prayer that marks that moment of what's called Ma'ariv Aravim, when the evenings, if you will, when the daylight is mixing into evening. I want to read the prayer for you as it's found in our Reform liturgy, to give you a sense of that profound connection. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot, that's Hebrew term for God, is your name, ever-living God. May you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. So ultimately, what I'd have to say is being green is not a new Jewish value. It wasn't foisted upon us by granola-crunching Berkeley, California students. It's a very old idea that's deeply within our Jewish psyche. What the new consciousness of our connection to the environment in these days has done for us as Jews is to rekindle an old connection and to allow us to see the roots of Judaism and to remind us of how deeply we are as Jews and as human beings to the cycles and to the health of our planet. Thank you.